my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. I do still do these. Been months, but we're here again, and I am reviewing Ambrosia by Lenia Lenient, or as I like to call it, anti-capitalist lesbians going feral. I will be crocheting as I talk about it because I am determined to make a new garland for the Christmas tree this year, and I just Googled it and discovered that a garland is usually going to be 54 fucking feet. So I really gotta get on that even though it's only October. So let's jump right in. Our story begins with carnage, or at least something big and bad has happened. Our pop star girl group Moxie, the mega international superstars, are sitting in a pile of broken glass and blood and torn gowns at the end of an awards show. Something has just gone down, and one of the characters makes a reference to getting sued, meaning that we know that Moxie had some hand in it, some point of cause, but we don't know the details. And the rest of the story is basically what leads up to that moment. It is told in non-linear fashion, going back in time to explain how the girl group came together and everything that led up to whatever happened at that awards ceremony, as well as the day of the ceremony itself. So, you know something's about to go down, and that pushed me through a lot of it. I needed to know how we got there. I will admit, though, it was a little bit confusing at first, trying to figure out what exactly the setup was, because I am not a stan by nature. So it took me a second to realize that the quote-unquote eras tag at the beginning of every scene was the Moxie albums. Like, oh, this is their Villainess era. This is their Lifeblood era, named after their albums. But I didn't immediately clock which album came first to figure out where we were in the timeline. So in a lot of cases, it was a little bit confusing. And I'm not gonna lie, at first I was like, I'm gonna be lucky if this is a 4-star, because that first half was just very slow buildup. And again, like I said before, I'm not big on showbiz, so like I kind of already assumed that most of it is bad, and I don't know to the extent that it is bad, but they definitely focus on the fact that, you know, these girls are put through plastic surgeries and really restrictive diets, and they're, you know, robbed of sleep and then put on uppers to stay awake, and they don't really have their own say in anything, and all of their brands are artificially curated for them and aren't exactly how they are in real life and all of that aspect. They are monitored constantly. Every, you know, phone call they make, someone else knows about it, and they are working for a mega conglomerate that controls basically every form of media. And that part was just too real, man. So it's all set up to be pretty bad. And I kind of already assumed that most of show business is bad. You know, I've heard a little bit about like what the K-pop industry is like. And this is not specifically K-pop. The girl group Moxie is like, you know, quote unquote international, and that they have people of differing backgrounds. Our protagonist Katya is from Bulgaria, not Russia. Does not like being referred to as Russian. But even she has basically been told that, like, you have to erase all traces of your accent. You can't speak in that, you know, Bulgarian language anymore. You have to just be generic international superstar. So at first I was like, okay, this just seems to be bad, and more bad. And a lot of it is just them being overworked and tired and depressed and realizing that the dream they thought they wanted was turning out to be a nightmare. I did like that, like, there was very complex relationships between the four girls in Moxie. You know, there's one that Ambrosia feels is more kind of like, they're not really friends, they're just allies because it's convenient. But then there's a girl she has a crush on because, yes, this is sapphic, like I said, anti-capitalist lesbians. And then there's the girl that she thinks she hates, but you realize their relationship is much more complex than that. And so at first I was like, okay, just standard showbiz bad in the first half. And then the second half hit. No joke. I had gone through half of the book and over a couple different reading sessions. Put it to the side. Okay. And then next day, new day, I'm like, all right, I got to get back to this. And I literally was just thinking to myself, okay, I'm just going to open it on my tablet, figure out where I'm at, and then let my tablet charge when I go to practice the flute for the day. And then I would come back and do what I usually do, which is prop it up on a stand and crochet while I read, because I can in fact crochet without looking. And I was going to do that. But then I just glanced through where I'm at and kept reading. and kept reading and literally just sat there and read the second half of the book in one fell swoop, because the second half is really where things pick up. It's one of those books where the ending justifies the rest of the book. And I'm always a big stickler for endings. Like, for me, the ending of a book is always an entire star rating in its own right. Like, it can add or take away a star by itself. And in this case, it actually, I think I might have upped it by multiple stars, because it made sense that the first part of the book was so slow, because the whole point of it was slowly turning the screw tighter, upping the tension steadily. And then the last, like, I would say like 60 pages is just reveal after reveal after reveal of horrible things and the ways they tried to fight back, because there are some references to quote unquote what you did, and they did something that the company didn't like, but even before the award show debacle and the award show themselves. So like, it's one of those books where, and I'm usually not the kind of person that says this like, oh, you just have to get through this part, but it's one of those things where the ending makes the slow start worth it almost, because there was just so many big reveals. But more importantly, the actual debacle, the actual cacophony at the award show is so much more cathartic for everything that came before it. I feel like if the book hadn't focused so much on everything the girls had gone through, what actually went down at the award show wouldn't seem as justified. It wouldn't seem as much poetic justice. It wouldn't be as big of a release if the rest of the book had not built up to that. And like literally the last, again, like 60 pages or so completely like not flipped. I didn't hate the book before then, but like it jumped up entirely in my estimation at that point, because I was just like, yes, you deserve this. Give it to them. They deserve all the chaos. Like, it was so good. And also, I don't know, I call it Lesbians, I call it sapphic. I don't know that I would actually say that there's specifically a capital R romance in here. I mean, I'm headcanoning them all as a polycule, just for me as a treat. But it's not hard and fast. This is Ambrosia's romantic interest in the story type beat. But I do like that there's a lot of really difficult conversations of how to push back in an age when all of your favorite forms of media are being controlled by mega conglomerates that are doing horrifically unethical things, and you're just a single consumer. And are you willing to give up watching and listening to the things you love to push back on this horrible system, or are you going to keep playing into it just for your own personal entertainment? And that's such a tricky thing in this modern day and age. I do think this is a very timely book. I don't know if it was meant to be for this point in time, but it definitely feels like it is very not on trend, because this kind of thing I'm praying is not a trend, but definitely on time. And I say this, as a sapphic anti-capitalist. I don't know that I would call myself feral, as I sit here doing a granny craft, but I definitely support my feral sisters in their endeavors. So overall, definitely a 5-star. It is a pretty quick read overall. My copy was like 230 some pages. It's just that first half takes its time ramping up, and then once it does, it's fantastic. If you are a stan and into stan culture, you probably won't like all the critiques of how awful show business is and the talk of, turning your personality into a brand. Like, at one point when Ambrosia figures out that she's gay and she tries talking to another queer person in the industry about it, he's like, it's not in your brand. It would hurt you to come out right now unless you're prepared to make it your brand, because you are a commodity that hundreds of people are basing their incomes off of, which is horrific and, as far as I can tell, pretty accurate to how a lot of modern show business works. So if you really are into pop culture, you may not like that aspect of it, but I'm low-key an obnoxious hipster, so I did. I did like that aspect. But overall, if you're into queer anti-capitalist media of any kind, this, I think, would be right up your alley. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.